Hello. Welcome to the next ReeVlog. I debated this being the last ReeVlog, but it isn't. Well, it probably isn't. It's not something that I can say for sure, because you never know what might happen in the future. The internet could collapse. Whatever. Why did I debate this being the last ReeVlog, however? Well, you may be able to tell, a little bit tan. I've been abroad. Went to France. It was an interesting experience. Didn't really learn any French, though my language has definitely suffered. My English language has suffered during my time there. That could, however, just be like the lack of use. And I was there with my friends. We talked, and there was jokes made about modern slang, which is, brain rot in and of itself. So I think that might be partially what was affecting me. Let's see if I can just get a little less glare. Oh. There we go. Yeah, so that was a thing. And on my travels back, it was roughly 12-hour journey. No, maybe 13. I don't know, time zones. But it was a reasonably long journey. I didn't have a great deal to do. I had some basic entertainment, like audiobooks, music. I had my sketchbook with me. I had my laptop, but the battery was too low to do very much, and I was pretty tired. I was thinking about just life in general and how far I've come since I started this channel, started doing these ReeVlogs. I think I touched on it recently in one of these very same ReeVlogs. I'm going to move this way. Does that help or make it worse? I don't know, whatever. But yeah, in one of these vlogs, I believe I mentioned that I started this channel with my then girlfriend, and it was going to be a hybrid. That didn't happen, so I started doing reviews, just like as the sole thing, which I haven't done in a long time. Which to start with was just going to do reviews, did it, Pokeballs out of 6. That was fun. And I enjoyed it, but I don't really partake in sort of up-to-date media. I'm not going to go to any new releases, that sort of thing, very often. So I kind of fell away from doing that sort of thing. And I also don't really partake in any interesting older things. Like, I don't collect any antiques or anything like that. I can't review them, don't know historical context, regardless. So I just kind of let that slide away, even after sort of taking after the whole Teching 101 style of wearing a suit for it, especially when I was bald, or shaved, I should say. That was not a great look for me, but whatever. And I'm not really a huge fan of suits. I'm not really a huge fan of vests aesthetically either, but it's kind of warm, and you'll note I've closed the windows and I've got my fan off so that you can hear me and the light isn't absolutely terrible. The sacrifices I make. But, yeah. Since then, that was, I think, about a decade ago, maybe a bit longer. I'm 27 now, so maybe 11 years. I'm not 100% sure on that, but the direction that this train of thought is meandering towards is that I'm a very different person now. Yes, my main hobby is the same as when I started, that being Kung Fu. Yes, I do still play video games, though to a much lesser extent. Yes, I still partake in fiction books, though mostly through audiobook form now. However, the person who started this channel, younger James, we shall refer to him as, he wouldn't have read non-fiction for anything other than homework or a school assignment of some kind. And that was still the case throughout most of my university career. Towards the end of it, that changed, and I started reading sort of philosophy books for just leisure, as well as reading some self-help style books when I was starting my sort of fitness journey back in 2019. So that was a change, and quite a large one, that also marked a decrease in my other leisure activity of video games. Because rather than playing a video game, I had to sacrifice some of that time to either think about sort of my upcoming meal preparations and what food I would need to buy, and sort of clock in with myself. No, you don't want to buy the kilo of bacon for £2, even though it's really cost effective. There's a lot of fat, and you will eat all in one sitting. If you eat all of the bacon in one sitting, that's a kilo of bacon in your belly. And then, you used to have it with the side of, a dozen eggs and 2 tins of baked beans. Not exactly a healthy breakfast. Well, depends. If you are heavy, I'm sure that can be reasonable, but, you still want to mix things up a little bit. So that was a thing, and, I started running, which isn't a quick, intense workout, especially when you first start, if you're in an unfit shape, like I was. If your cardio is terrible, you haven't done that sort of thing for many, many years, you need to work on it slowly. So, whilst my beginner runs were really short, I also did a lot of walking, and I've always enjoyed walking my entire life, apart from when I was like 5 or younger maybe, and my mum would walk really fast and I'd have to pretty much jog to keep up. Not such a fan back then. And, well, the person who started doing exercise, that's a different me as well. So I now have a lot more knowledge. I've read a whole bunch of fitness-related books. I got my PT certification. I've got my nutritional advisor certification. I am moving through certain stages of fitness slowly but steadily, because that's the way to do it. I'm rehabbing all my old injuries. This knee is the last long-lasting one, but I am getting better with it. I also still have my plantar fasciitis as a problem, but again, I'm working on it and I'm improving. This shoulder is imbalanced, but working and improving. Whereas younger James, not start the channel younger James, not reading non-fiction younger James, but early fitness younger James, we'll call him 2019 James. 2019 James was a hopeful person. He didn't enjoy any aspect of fitness, including running, which I still don't enjoy, but I do enjoy the after effects, which I didn't at the time, because the after effects usually meant collapsing, exhausted, which now I can go for a moderate run, which wasn't something I had as an option before. Any run was a hard run. So 2019 James was mentally looking forwards, and he pushed through things specifically for certain reasons. One of which, and I don't think this was 2019 James, this was probably like 2018 James, maybe, I don't know. I'm not sure about my whole life's timeline. But I had another girlfriend whilst I was at uni, very brief, not great relationship, whatever. But they were sort of an accountability mechanism when I started skipping. And so I did a lot of skipping, and I would tell them when I skipped, and they'd be like, "Whoa, I'm proud of you," that sort of thing. There was very little self-accountability. Something I still struggle with, but a lot less than I used to. Because now I'm at a place where I know what I need to do, and it's just getting myself to do it. Whereas before it was, I'm going to skip. That's all I'm going to do. Because that is something I know will be good for me. And if I do it, I've done it. And I was just like focusing on improving the skill of skipping, which is something I would like to get back to eventually. But, I'm still way better now than I was before I started back then. And so 2019 James was like, right, girlfriend, they're going to want me to be healthy. Hopefully. Who knows? But more importantly, Kung Fu. Because I was, I believe, hitting a point around then where my my lack of fitness was the roadblock to progressing with Kung Fu. And that was also around the time that I decided that I wanted to be a Kung Fu instructor one day. Something that has spiraled, as things tend to do, snowballed out of control, and turned into my life goal with add-ons. So that version of myself was a one with clear direction. I was at uni, so I was finishing that. I was planning to move into teacher training and do teaching, and that didn't work out, but whatever. These are things that have shaped who I then became. So that clear direction, doing uni stuff, working on Kung Fu, and then planning for teacher training. Very clear direction. Very linear path. Teacher training didn't work out. As teacher training didn't work out, and I contacted student finance and they didn't get back to me about wanting their money back because, I had a loan and I had the rest of the semester worth of loan that I said, hey, do you need me to pay this back now? Because there's this amount that I haven't spent and then I can work on paying the rest back later. They never replied, so I thought they don't want it back, which is the sensible thing to do, and then I figured it'd just be paid back as per other loans. Not getting into the details of that. I used that to try to start my business, Night Self-Defense and Fitness. Had a great time with it. And it had some peaks and troughs. The peaks were never super high, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. And there were a couple periods which, if they were sustained, would have been enough for me to get by on. Not to thrive, but enough to get by. And then hopefully with a bit of hard work and a little smidgen of luck, that could have grown into a successful business venture. However, that was COVID, James. That was the healthiest point in my life. My cardiovascular fitness was amazing. My strength was okay, but my strength endurance was really high. So whilst I can probably now lift more, carry more, etc. than I used to, I wouldn't be able to carry it as far. And I wouldn't be able to do, say, as many push-ups. My jump squats would suck, etc. Like, I really struggle with jump squats nowadays, and that sucks because they are one of the few exercises that I can actually say, to an extent, that I enjoy. And so, something I'm working on, but it's going to take a lot to get back to that, because COVID and post-COVID, James, the next phase in this channel, woo, was like the road of Reeve when I was trying to do MMA, but I couldn't get anyone to put me in a match. There was the attempt at my business. There was getting my PT stuff sorted, hill sprints being a big part of my life at the time, attempting some side hustle type work just to get some bonus revenue. That didn't go very well. Wrote my 2 books and all of that jazz. That was probably like the best period in my life, because there was, again, clear direction. I wanted to improve Kung Fu, I wanted to improve my fitness and health in general, and I wanted to make my business work. Making my business work is not a clear linear path, but it is a clear goal. However, I realised during that time, as eventually the universal credit support for people starting a business dried up, I realised I don't have the outgoing nature that certain people do have, which is always going to make my growth slower in a gym-based environment. And similarly, I don't have a mind for advertising or marketing and stuff like that. So whilst I could theoretically learn it, I'm well aware that most of the sort of techniques and principles that people use are things I would be uncomfortable doing myself. So short of having enough money to hire someone to do it for me, or have a volunteer, it's not going to work out. And so I was very quickly, at that point, when I got my next job, working for the garage door company, not the one called the garage door company, just a garage door company, I was like, well, business is going to have to close down. So I eked it out for as long as I could, and then I got hit with glandular fever. only had to take, I think, 2 days off work, and then came in on the third, or I took 1 day off and came in on the second. He's still feeling rough, but with a lot of medicine. But that's when the post-viral chronic fatigue hit. That super killed the business. Like, it was barely ticking over at all. I was making maybe like £100 a month, 200 perhaps off of it, depending on who showed up, how many times, whether I took a day off, that sort of jazz. So not a lot, but I was only also working on it 1 day a week, working Monday to Friday at my job, and then Sundays on the business. That would have been okay, I think, if it wasn't for the post-viral chronic fatigue. Now, I was also working in a dark office, wasn't getting enough vitamin D, my diet was starting to slowly suffer, and nutritionally speaking it was mostly okay, but it was a lot of processed foods, which was the problem, I think. And because of the chronic fatigue, I couldn't do the training that I wanted to do. And yeah, I did want to do the training. And finding that I wanted to do the training and was unable hit really hard, and it wasn't a good time for me. And I'll never forget that. If I do, it probably will be through, head trauma of some sort, or extremely old age. But hey, we all know that I don't intend to get that old in terms of biological clock. Chronologically, yes. Biologically, no. So, yeah, we have chronic fatigue, James, which is where I currently am, but I think I'm towards the end of that cycle. And what I have historically used this channel for is kind of like how Codex uses her vlogs in the guild. And when I was thinking about having this be the last ReeVlog, the only thing that I could think of was the end of that series, where she signs off, and it's like, I don't need this anymore. I now have this life separate that is completely self-contained or sustaining or whatever. And whilst I don't use this channel as a sort of way to talk to people without talking to people, because I do have people in my life that I talk to, I see my friends regularly, not every week because work schedules, but outside of that, every week I try to see at least one group of friends or speak to them on Discord anyway. And while speaking to them on Discord isn't the same, we do organise things, we meet up, like the other friends that I went to France with, for example. This is a place for me to partially work through my thoughts, kind of like a diary. It's of a diary, as younger James would have said. And the things that I show on this channel are all very tailored, very filtered, to fit a publicly accessible, available, and appropriate perspective on my life. I'm not going to go into super private details. I'm not going to go into... Well, I'm not the sort of person who's going to wander around, like, flexing topless for a video. And I don't want to start doing that sort of content. However, it might be moving into a more clearly focused direction, because I still want to do these general chat type ReeVlogs where I can just think about my life and speak it out loud on camera. Why on camera? Because if I didn't do it on camera, I probably wouldn't do it at all. And if I did, I'd probably look absolutely crazy, because as it stands, I probably sound slightly strange. But my life this past 2.5, 3 years, when I've been dealing with this whole chronic fatigue problem and doing my best to pull myself out of that has involved a lot of research into what chronic fatigue is, the different types, whether or not there are certain things that help. Literally every study that I have ever read on the subject has said that light exercise helps. And so that's what I started with. Walking. Lots of walking. Little and often is what they recommend. I wasn't great at that because scheduling. So I tended to do walk somewhere, sit down, have a break, walk somewhere, sit down, have a break, rather than go for a walk, come back, go for a walk, come back. I went on these relatively long walks, probably 2 to 3 miles at most, and yeah, I found all the benches in the local area, would walk to one, sit down, have a rest, walk to the other, sit down, have a rest, walk to the next, sit down, have a rest, and repeat. And I don't think I really noticed a change, because I did that for over a year, and I don't really think I noticed much difference. However, there is also the nutritional side of things to look at. Vitamin D supplements helped. When I got my vitamin D back up to sort of what is recognised as a regular baseline, I continued taking them, as I barely noticed the difference in my energy levels. Once it's probably improved since then. I haven't had it tested since then because, medical resources on the NHS aren't exactly freely available. Well, I haven't asked, to be honest, but I don't really want to. But I still take vitamin D supplements to this day. Not as strong, because it's summer. There's a lot of sun around. Even though I am doing night shifts, the sun is still out when I get up and go to work, and the sun is up by the time I come back. As autumn and winter roll around, I will move back to stronger supplements to make sure that I at least maintain that baseline or slightly above it. That has helped. Not a huge amount, but it has helped. And then this year, having had that little bit of help, I've had a little bit more time, a little bit more energy available to, one, put into other training. And so I have a daily routine of minimal training that I'm going to do unless the fatigue is super bad or somehow I run out of time for it. But I've tried to structure my life in such a manner that I will always have time for this minimum basic. It is hollow body hold, at least 30 seconds, sit-ups, 10 straight on, 10 one side, 10 the other side to get the obliques involved, 10 push-ups, 10 squats. Very small amount of exercise. Can do it in 5 minutes if I have like a good day. If I'm not having a good day, it can take a lot longer, but that doesn't matter as long as I get it done. Ideally, I also want to do like that 10,000 step minimum, but it's not always an option depending on the day. So, on top of that, I started a gym membership earlier in the year, I think like February time. I went for a couple of months and then had to stop because finances were super tight because I had some problems pop up. Finances still aren't amazing, but they're slightly better, so I've joined a different gym. This one's also 24 hours, but it is a more generic gym, so it has more equipment, and it's a chain. So I've got access to treadmills, which means I can run on a slightly padded surface, a lot easier than running on the road, as well as the padding. So that's going to do less damage to the old knee, but it also has more machines and free weight availability, which enables me to specifically work on the areas I need to easier, so I can do the rehab work. Pardon me again. Ooh, something's a rumbling in my belly. It's probably I had some Coca-Cola earlier, so that's probably what that is. Yeah. You'll know most of what I've been speaking about for probably the last 5 minutes or so has been fitness, because that is again my goal. The research shows that exercise helps with the chronic fatigue. There are other elements though, because the vast majority of it seems to be something to do with the nervous system. So, what can help with the nervous system? Well, the omega-3 and omega-6 intake, bioavailability, etc. is important because it helps with the transmission of signals, according to the research, and my memory. My memory is not great, so I might be misremembering some elements. But regardless, adding more fish and supplementing omega-3, pretty sure it's omega-3, yeah, omega-3 has helped, along with vitamin C and zinc. There are a couple other things that I'm experimenting with supplementing, but so far, I'll finish a jar of the supplements, and then I won't get any more, and I'll see whether it makes me feel worse, because it's much easier for me to know if I'm feeling worse than it is if I'm feeling better. Not sure why. So if I run out of one, I'll stop. If I run out of two, I'll refill one and keep taking it, but not the other one. So that way I can test which one might be having the effect. And then I will continue to keep the jar until I've tested whether it makes a difference. If I do run out of two at the same time and I take one and I feel worse, and I flip it and I don't feel, and I continue to feel worse, and then I'll take both, because then that way it might be the combination of those two rather than either individually. And so I think the next one that I'm going to try to introduce will be magnesium. Regardless though, the omega-3 has seriously helped. Not entirely sure what it was, but that has helped a lot. Probably the signal sending. And I have found that there are sort of instances of sharp pain, which a lot of the fatigue symptoms that I had did feel like sharp pain. Sort of when I tried to move, the way that I kind of visualized it was like I'd be lying in bed and I would attempt to move my arm, and it would feel as though all of the blood in my veins sprouted needles that were simultaneously tearing through my veins as I was moving, but as it was moving, as well as like pistoning in and out in place. It was really painful, is all I can really say. And I do get localized small versions of that still when I hit a lot of stress, or if I get to a point of like a really high adrenaline, such as a deer jumping out in front of the car whilst I'm at work. At that point, I get it usually sort of around my forearms, sometimes in my legs. But I've not had any hugely fatigued days in a little while since I've started my most recent supplement stack and my daily exercise works. Yes, I've still had bad days, but those bad days aren't as bad as they used to be. And my good days are still only as good as they used to be, which means I'm still not at the point where I was before the chronic fatigue, but that's the goal. And as I said, this might become a clearer, more linear, a more directly oriented channel, like with the focus being my recovery. And if I do end up going in that direction, and I swear I will eventually get to why this isn't the last ReeVlog, if I end up going in that direction, that will probably mean doing something that I've been doing on a private Instagram of mine, which is logging my workouts, saying, here's this one that I did, here's how it went, here's how I felt before, after, during, here's how I could maybe improve it for the next time, etc. So, reviews, the channel would be reviewing my fitness and health in general. And it would also probably touch on elements of my diet, my supplements, etc. And as a still certified but not active PT, I can't help but feel like that sounds like marketing in the way that a lot of PTs do it. And I swear that's not the goal. But I'm actively choosing to follow more fitnessy people, both on like YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. I do have it, but I'm not proud of the fact because it's largely brain rot. Yeah, but I'm doing my best to do that. I'm trying to continue my information increase, and so whilst these vlogs would still probably exist, they would be separate. I would probably need to start. Well, either my ReeVlogs would then become that, or there would be a separate series, which would be the most prevalent for new releases on the channel, whereas these would take the back seat. I'm not really sure, haven't put too much thought into it as of yet. But yes, that's why this isn't going to be the last ReeVlog, because I want to keep doing this. I think it's good for me. and I still have space for it in my life. My life is moving further away, which is probably why these are less frequent, because the channel has always been sort of media related, and because I play less games, I'm not going to be doing playthroughs, I'm not going to be doing theories very often, though maybe just to honour it I might do one when Darksiders 4 comes out. Hell, I'd love to do a Darksiders 4 playthrough if I have time and energy, etc., just because then I think I would have one of all of them, apart from Genesis, but Genesis is a spin-off anyway. I never finished Genesis. One day, maybe. I didn't enjoy it very much when I tried it. But yeah, I'm thinking to keep myself accountable, I can use this platform, which would be kind of scary because it could potentially involve, you know, like physique checks, and I'm not doing my exercise and stuff for aesthetics, but it is a very trackable thing. There was a word that I've not managed to think of. It's just evaded me. Great. But, you know, it's super trackable, and so if my physique improves, then that will show I am making progress. Similarly, there are elements of like tracking run pacing, duration, weights, etc., rough calorie counting, that sort of thing. And I know this has been a super long video, longer than the vast majority on the channel, I am sure, and sorry about that. Probably gonna be no views, but that's fine because I don't do these for the views. As I said, this is me like thinking out loud, more or less. The other thing I'm doing is I want to try more different types of exercise. Yes, I've joined a gym, and that's going to be good for my general strength endurance, my general maximum strength, and my cardio. 3 very important factors. Not going to help with mobility like at all. So my 4 kettlebells and various free weights, other than kettlebells, my dumbbells that I've got here, are probably going to be where I'm going to work on that area. Because Kung Fu is going to help with mobility a little, but in very specific areas and ways. I'm not going to say his name because I don't want to get it wrong. There's a guy who does like rope flow stuff and everything. Very chill videos on YouTube. I like his content, and what he does looks enjoyable. So that sort of thing is something I want to look into trying. But on top of trying to do all this physical stuff, because let's be honest, the vast majority of things related to chronic fatigue are physical or based in around sort of depression, anxiety, and other negative emotions. And I don't have a lot of those. Yeah, I get anxious and sad, but I would very much say I'm not in a depressed state as someone who was when they were younger. I'm just pottering along, you know, beep boop. The thing I would say is I want to try looking into spirituality a little more, and I mean that from a non-traditional sense. Well, I'll be looking through traditional aspects, so I want to look into general spiritual belief stuff, but specifically I want to look into like Taoism, probably a little bit of Buddhism, and then branch out into like animism and all that jazz, because I feel as though whilst I'm not like a God-believing person, there is no harm in directing energy, your thoughts, in a particular direction. So like I've got a book over there on Taoist yoga, I think. Yeah. Which at some point I'm going to read, do the thing that I used to do of like pencil circle highlighting parts with little sticky tabs to show me like I've highlighted these parts, these areas to focus on. I'm going to read through it. It's going to be fun. It's going to be good. I'm going to hopefully learn a lot of stuff. And I've always had a draw of some sort towards justice. And in my various whiteboards up there that are focused around my yearly theme, as well as the path that I intend to walk, which I think is a very Taoist belief, temperance has taken a role, because justice without wisdom is tyranny. It's something that came to me whilst I was on a walk one day, and it's something that has stuck with me ever since. And I would like to think philosophy being the path of wisdom, justice being something that I think is required to have a righteous life and society. I would like to put them together and, well, embody temperance as well as, fortitude, as I'm a big fan of fortitude, and it is required to do the exercises and such that I need to do to get past the fatigue to move on with my life. So, with that in mind, and younger James's obsession, some may say, but fascination is probably more accurate, with mythology, Nemesis, Greek goddess, is a place that I direct my thoughts from time to time. I wouldn't say that I am a worshipper of a ancient Greek goddess. I would not say that I'm a worshipper of anything, really, apart from myself, obviously. However, I would say that I kind of pray sometimes, maybe. Don't have a better word for it, but whenever I think of something's unjust, my brain goes to her. Whenever I do something that I think of as just, or act in a way that may help towards future justice, again, goes to her. Mention her in my thoughts by name sometimes. And it's interesting. I don't think that I'm going to end up becoming like a worshipper. I don't think I'm going to become religious in a sense beyond agnosticism, which I currently have. But when I think of Nemesis, it is more through an embodiment of justice, and to a lesser extent temperance. Having looked into it a little bit, having doing this, I realised not all the stories are that good, and it's specifically retributive justice, retribution, which I still think is fine. I think that it is arguably the truest form of justice, not in a spiteful way though. I think that justice, preventative justice, isn't really justice at all, because they haven't done anything. And you can have retributive justice, as hard as it is to say, against people who have done things but not big things. So, for example, if someone was planning to rob a bank, they'd probably have to put a lot of work into the plan, and all of that work would show that they intend to enact the plan, and therefore you can instill upon them retributive justice. But because they haven't actually done it, and there are not really any consequences to those actions, it is going to need to be lesser than if they had robbed the bank and say someone died in the process, for example. But it's just a fun way to think about things. It's something that keeps my brain ticking over in the direction that I wanted to go, which is towards temperance. There was another point towards this, but I don't remember what it was, and this video's gone on a long time. I really need a drink, because it's a lot of talking, more than I've had to do for quite a while, because I've not DM'd any D&D in a long time, and yeah, I've just been chatting mad shit, as some people may say. So, yeah. Regardless, I hope that anyone who's actually listened to this has found it somewhat interesting. If you have, and you have any thoughts on what I've said, please let me know either directly or in the comments, and I hope you've had a good day, or are going to have a good day, or are having a good day. Regardless, I'll catch you cats on the flip-flop. One day there will be a last ReeVlog. Goodbye.